we're putting a new ECU in. Well, Steve is. And he was not pumped about it. Give him a whole pep talk. He looked really sad.
So for
I'm super excited.
So for people that do not know, what is this?
This is my shit box.
I don't know if a lot of people would call it that though.
Yeah, well, I'm sure somebody would. It is a 1990 Mercedes 190E with a twin turbo Texas speed thing here. And previously we had a AEM ECU in it, but we struggled getting the drive-by-wire stuff for the twin throttle bodies working. So now we've gone to an Mtron KV8, and Steve's putting that in today. Then it's dyno days, tune, and then we shelved this thing. That's not true. We're finally gonna beat the shit out of it.
Nice. So the problem with the AEM was the twin throttle body issue?
Yeah, we couldn't get it resolved. Well, we could get it resolved in a way that was dangerous and I would probably die. So we decided against that. And then, yeah, now we're doing an Mtron.
Cool. So why would you go with an Mtron over any other ECU?
Well, Tim's wants and demands out of this car kind of evolved from just being kind of like a show car-ish kind of fun thing to actually him wanting to actually function. So as far as aftermarket ECUs goes that actually have a true proper traction control and torque management, the Mtron's probably the best one out there for that. So we're going to choose to go that route with the car so we could have some proper traction control and actually make this car actually function.
And then what other features does the thing have?
Well, it has, instead of needing the ECU plus an input-output expander, the KV8 has enough inputs and outputs that we don't need a separate expander to actually have everything. So we could have everything in one box in this one instead of two. So the functionality and the actual wiring will be a lot simpler in the car afterwards. As far as the ECU goes, the actual data processing speed of this ECU versus the old AEM is substantially different. So everything will just be crisper, better, happier all around for the engine. Because this thing's hopefully going to make 4-digit power. We would like to actually have something that actually can keep a good eye on all the critical sensors and have all our safeties built into everything that we can, and make sure that this thing actually runs and drives as well as it should.
Sweet.
Yeah.
So if you were trying to trick me, this is how you would do it. Oh.
Yeah.
Ooh.
It's all billet.
Yeah, billet case.
It's all fancy.
That is amazing.
Look at the package.
It's so small.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's got all the good shit inside.
It's so tiny.
Yeah. I think it'll fit up here with the AEM was. Slowly going through each wire to confirm I got the right ones as I make the switch over. That's the drive-by-wire plug. I'm just confirming the pinout at the ECU to each sensor, so make sure I got each wire individually labeled before I start to pin them into the other ECU.
Oh, so you have to repin everything.
Every single wire.
So it's all proprietary.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So got to cut off each individual ECU connector and repin them all into the Mtron. So
That's wild.
I need to make sure I got all the right wires. Yeah. I'm gonna label each wire. The Mtron doesn't have as many 5 volts and 0 volts for the sensors, so I need to. They'll all have to be spliced together at the ECU. So I need to find all the 5 volts, all the 0 volts. Sadly, this harness, when it was made, the guy who started the harness didn't bother to make like all the sensors 0 volts and 5 volts the same color, so it's kind of all mishmash. So it's going to kind of look kind of weird, but I'll have to find them all because, like I said, they're all different colors.
Oh no.
So it's
Oh no.
it's a little frustrating on that point. So it's going to look a little strange when they're all tied to one spot, but I'll make it work. Yeah. Got my multimeter in there, just on continuity, and I'm just going wire by wire, finding each one of the computer, marking it, labeling it, so then I can bundle them all up nicely and then add them all into their computer. It's a time-consuming, monotonous job, but it's the only way to make sure I'm grabbing the right wires. And because I finished this harness, I didn't start it.
Yeah.
So it's definitely not done how I would normally do it, and especially because like the color code thing would drive me crazy. But so like I said, I'll make it right. Yeah. We're nearing the end of this conversion. I'm just making up the wideband O2 sensor harness. That's one thing we have to change. The other ECU used a different style of wideband. So we need to convert it to a Bosch 4.9 sensor, which Tim is picking up right now. And I just have a couple of outputs to wire up some relays, and then I just need to, then I'll reconfirm the pinout one more time on the new ECU out. And then that'll be it. And then we're ready for the dyno.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. I'll do a chunk of loom from wherever it meets up to the back of the firewall bulkhead, and then I'll put a piece of shrink tube here, break them out in 2 halves, and then run the other 2 out to where the O2s are going to be. And this is only one connector. When you have 4 of these pinned out with 25, 26 wires each connector, and you have 100 wires, it looks like absolute chaos for a bunch of it. So it definitely is. Over the years of doing it so often, it doesn't. I can look at a pile of wires and just be like, okay, it's going to work. Yeah, that's
awesome.
What we're here for. So it. I definitely used to be intimidated by it when I first started doing it full time, but now they're just wires.
Yeah.
Because like as long as you have good instructions and the basic knowledge about what the pins are doing, it's not honestly all that difficult. And as I move forward, I'm going to have some content for that specific reason, is like not being scared to make your own engine harness or to wire in something to actually know how to wire the inputs and outputs in a way that like you're not going to mess it up, because that's one of those things that people just, they buy an aftermarket ECU and then they get completely confused by the instructions, and they're looking at it like, well, I don't know what input to put where, I don't know how to wire this type of sensor into my ECU or those types of things. And a lot of manufacturers don't do enough, and I don't know if that's purposely so that they get pushed toward a professional to do the install or whatever it might be on that front, because a lot of it is like, if you don't know the lingo for when it comes to a lot of this stuff, because and honestly, like North American lingo for the inputs and outputs is completely different than European and Australian style, like what they call an input or how they write what they're for. It's just learning the product and learning how to use it, and for the most part, lots of aftermarket ECUs are pretty much the same when it comes to wiring. Like obviously the pin arrangement's different for every single one, but as far as what the inputs and outputs do are pretty similar as far as what they're capable of. It's neat to have one like the Mtron we're using, in that every single output can be not just an on-off output, but they can all be a pulsed output, a PWM control.
That's so cool.
So it doesn't matter which one you choose. Like anyone can be told to be whatever you need it to be, which is fantastic.
So cool.
So you don't have to like so you're like, oh, I need to make sure I use my PWMs on my PWMs and so like this one, it's an output, it's an output. You know, you can make it be whatever you need it to be. So that part's really neat about having that level of adjustability with it. Drag racing is tricky because it's essentially only using a very small part of an ECU's capabilities. Does the car start? Does it do a burnout? And then we're full throttle. And then, so like there's a whole bunch of the map we don't even use for the car, because you're only really in one part of the fuel and timing cell where you're just at wide open throttle. And if all goes well, the car should never be at half throttle or part throttle, so there's not really a whole lot of sense to have a ton of adjustability in some of those cars, because there's just not really a need for it. Getting the car to leave and get going, sure, there's probably some need for some traction strategies and other things, but overall, like, you don't have to have such a complicated map, because there's just not a lot of there's not really need for it.
Well, for a street car, it's very different.
Street car, very different. Street car or road race car or other things where you're trying to deal with on-off throttle stuff and traction in different types of situations, different loads, different gears. You need an ECU that can handle what you're trying to get out of the vehicle. And so the reason why I pushed him to do the Mtron was because I think he's actually going to try and drive this thing fairly hard, and I hope he does, and I hope he does some autocross stuff with it, because I think that's hopefully where this car might actually shine and come to life. So
Yeah.